Welcome to the Sports on Tap NEO High School Football Show. Be sure to join the conversation by liking us on
Welcome back to Sports on Tap. This is Ed Dick alongside my cohort, my compadre, my colleague from the American Division. From the
Two
Suburban
for
League.
today.
Word.
Sean Duffy. We have Josh Jeffy and Rob Trotman here.
Yeah, they're here too.
Down here live in Studio J, wrapping up our Week 8 coverage of the Suburban League, the Greater Cleveland Conference, and the Southwestern Conference. We've gone over the scores, we've gone over the conference standings, and we have gone over potential playoff scenarios, the potential playoff, where things stand for all of our teams and where they are, where they're positioned and where they could end up. And our next guest is no stranger to setting this up for everybody. This is a gentleman who's had this website going for over almost 20 years. We use it. I'm pretty sure most others, either podcasts, news outlets, or everyone else uses it uses it to do their high school recaps. We are on the phone with none other than Joe Eitel from JoeEitelcom. He's live with us. Joe, how are you doing tonight? Thanks for joining the show.
I'm doing great. How are you guys tonight?
We are doing fantastic. This is Ed Dick here. We're very happy to have you on our show. We're getting into Week 8 here, and your website as the season goes on just continues to evolve, and now we're starting to see the potential playoff scenarios set up, and we started from Week 1 and we followed all the way through. So it's just. We wanted to start off by asking you first. How did 20 years ago when this thing first started? How did you go about getting into this and setting this all up?
Well, it's an interesting story, I guess. When I went to college, I got into computer programming, and once I graduated, I kind of needed something to work on to kind of tone my skills a little bit. And I had always been interested in the football rankings for the playoffs in Ohio, and so that kind of became the project of choice, I guess. And I just went to work on it and got all the formulas and schedules and collected everything and kind of went from there.
I mean, how much time does that take? To come up with all these formulas and just really figure out a good concept for this, because the Ohio high school does, playoff rankings and things like that, but you really came up with, like you said, the formulas with the points and everything that really everyone relies on now.
Well, right. So the basic formula is exactly what the OHSA uses. That's how they determine the playoffs. And then what I did is I basically just expanded that to give kind of the best case and worst case scenarios, the maximums and minimums, which again it's kind of the same formula, just expanded out with assuming a team will win all of its games or lose all of its games, and kind of getting those ranges. So once you have the base formula from the OHSAA, how to get the level 1 points, the level 2 points, and average it out. The rest of it kind of flowed naturally.
We're talking with Joe Eitel, as he is here from JoeEitelcom, and want to thank him for coming on tonight. And we've relied on your website a lot. When we've done our show, it's been so accurate. And a lot of our listeners, when we go on location, I know they say they love when we start getting into the playoffs and how accurate the points are, and if they're in, if they're out. Have you heard a lot of the same? Have you had a lot of people tell you how they love the website and how accurate and kind of, they almost know before the season's over, kind of who's in and who's out, I think, and it's been pretty helpful that way.
Yeah, especially a lot of coaches will, send me emails and, thank me for putting the time in. So it helps them out, I think, kind of getting to know where their own teams are going to end up. Of course, I think most of them have their own person on staff who's kind of calculating the points as well, but it's a good double check. And, some other folks have sent me emails over the years, just, thanking me for everything I've done, but for me, it's kind of fun. I just like to put it out there, and I'm glad that people are able to use it and get some good entertainment out of it with the accuracy.
Joe, this is Sean Duffy, and one of the things I love about your site is that it is not only the algorithms and the kind of the way you can read the tea leaves, so to speak, probably going, at least for me, from week 6 on, is just the way you're able to break down the information that you get. And what impresses me the most is, I have not even counted how many high school football games go into a Friday night or a Saturday. Did you? My big question for you to start off here would be, in the beginning, how difficult was it compositing all that data so that you could? Were you just reading every newspaper, or did you have to contact the Ohio High School Athletic Association and pay them extra money to get the information? Or because I'm looking at you have it all the way down to Division 7, and that's a lot of teams, from Division 1 all the way down there, and I'm in awe of the amount of data that you're getting on a weekly basis and able to run it through that particular formula or algorithm, however you want to call it. Do you find it now, obviously maybe it's a little streamlined given the way technology is, but in the beginning, was it, kind of a labor intensive effort?
Well, you're exactly right there. In the beginning, it was, it's about counting the out-of-state games that I also need to track for the second level points. It's about, I'd say, roughly 400 games or so per week. And,
wow.
The majority of those are on Friday nights, of course, and then a few stragglers on Saturdays or Thursday nights. So, yeah, when I first started it, it would take me the better part of the weekend to get all the scores. I'd usually have to wait till Saturday morning. Newspapers or the newspaper websites would update their local scores. I always try to get the scores as local as possible because they're a little more accurate in that regard. When you get the local journalists and sports writers that cover their teams and would know whether the scores are right or wrong. So yeah, in the beginning, that's how I kind of did it. Mostly with newspapers. Radio stations, websites, and things like that, message boards to pick up a few scores here and there. And, I'd have things done usually by Saturday afternoon for the Friday games. And then, Saturday night games weren't too bad to get the same night, but some of those slipped into Sunday morning. But now these days with advances in social media and things like Twitter and people at the games giving live updates, I can get most of the Friday night scores. Usually they start trickling in about 9 o'clock, the finals. I can usually get all those keyed into the system by about 12:30 a.m. So it's down to about 3.5 hours, which is a significant reduction in the amount of time it takes me. And then Saturdays, I kind of I'm able to get most of the games in as they go final. There's usually 3 or 4 games going on at a time, and usually tune one in on the live stream and watch one on Twitter or, something like that, and try to get those scores in as soon as I can.
Hey, Joe, this is Josh Effie. Looking at your website, you do have the disclaimer on there that these rankings are for informational purposes only. Over the course of almost 20 years doing this, I'm wondering if you put that disclaimer on at the very beginning, or have there been issues in the past where some issues have arised when you're doing this that led to you making mistakes or having coaches getting mad at you. So basically, just wondering if over the course of 20 years, have you had any major mistakes that almost made you stop doing this?
No, I haven't really.
That sounds like a guy who's solid in his math.
The formulas are solid, right? They don't change.
Right.
The formula hasn't changed since they introduced the level 2 divisor, and that was probably in the mid '90s. So the formula's not changing. The only issue would be kind of the data collection, and occasionally you pick up a score where they've reported the wrong team winning. And occasionally I'm going so fast that I just type in the wrong score by mistake.
It happens.
So, it happens. It does. 400 scores a night, it happens. So the good thing is, since I try to update the site multiple times per night on a Friday night, and so if I do something like that, with the number of eyes that are on the website, I usually hear about it pretty quickly, and I'm able to get it fixed pretty quickly. So, usually a wrong score is up for no more than 15 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on, how fast the folks report it back to me. But yeah, the main reason for the disclaimer is really because exactly that, because I'm entering scores as I go. There's bound to be a mistake every now and then. I can't recall any huge ones like in week 9 or 10 recently where a wrong score caused a team to get marked as a clinched playoff spot, and when they really hadn't. I haven't had anything like that. That would be kind of bad. I think I did have that happen to me the first year when I wasn't necessarily using local scores, and that's kind of where I learned that lesson, to start using local scores.
Yeah. A team celebrating. Hey, I thought we made the playoffs according to JoeEitelcom. It says we clinched, but they really didn't clinch.
Right. So the other thing that happens, and it happened a couple years ago, is after all the scores are in it on Friday, and then on the Saturday morning of week 10, there was a forfeit that came out, which kind of threw gum in the works of everything. So, that's kind of what I'm trying to get at there. It's, even though it says you clinched one day, you never know if there's a forfeit or something. It might kind of change the position of teams the next day.
Yeah, you got a very nice separate page outlined that says important notes about the playoff feature, and it definitely and it outlines all those different scenarios that that could happen that are obviously out of your control, and things that may not come to light until after the fact. One of the things that I've that I've noticed over the last few years is there are, as rare as it happens, there are two teams at a point that can have the same average despite their level 1 and level 2 points. So sometimes it goes to a level 3 as sort of a tiebreaker. Could you describe the level 3 divisor a little bit?
So I guess first off, so the level 1 is the points you earn when you defeat a team, and the level 2 is the points you earn when a team you defeated wins a game. So then the next level, then the level 3 is, I guess, one more step after that is the teams that you defeated and they defeated a team, and then that team defeats a team is basically kind of what that is.
Wow.
So it's when you figure you can play 10 games, your opponents play 10 games, and their opponents play 10 games, then you potentially have up to 1,000 games being counted there in the level 3 average.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of number crunching going on there.
Yeah, and like you said, it's so rare I don't even display that unless it comes up. Then I'll go kind of figure it out as needed.
Do the playoff statuses like in your system? Do those pop up on your website automatically, or do you have to manually input that information into your data set?
So all those are based on the minimum and maximum points. So it's all automated now. My Friday night basically consists of typing in the scores and pushing a button, and that will do all the calculations and to create all the files and upload them.
Well, I'm glad it's a little easier for you, because even typing in 400 scores and then just hitting a button to have them go through is still a little bit of work. But I'm glad it doesn't take your whole weekend up, and it only takes a few hours at least now. It gets easier as you keep doing it, I'm sure.
Right.
But, yeah, it's really interesting, and, we've had a lot of fun using it. According to our conferences, we've covered the Greater Cleveland Conference, the Southwestern Conference, and the Suburban League, along with Buckeye. And, when you look at the Greater Cleveland Conference, teams like Menor, Euclid, and Solon are right there at the top. They're in the top 4 right there, and then Ignatius at 5. But then when you go down to 8, you have a team like Strongsville. And, they play a team like Brunswick and Elyria that doesn't have many wins in the end. So, obviously, they need to win those. But looking at the teams below them, obviously they need those teams probably not to win too many games. What do you think about Strongsville's likelihood in making the playoffs? If they win out, are they going to need a little help there to stay at that 8th spot?
Yes, it looks like they're definitely going to need a little bit of help there. Like you said, their upcoming opponents aren't going to generate a lot of points for them. And a team like Jackson there, or Cleveland Heights even, could kind of jump ahead of them with wins in their Week 10 games, which would both be worth points. Even Berea could jump up if they finish 7-3. They could jump ahead of Strongsville pretty easily. So yes, Strongsville would probably need each of those 3 teams, as well as Shaker. It looks like Shaker also has the potential, if they can pull off some big wins against Solon. You could. They'll definitely need some teams to lose, but those teams have some pretty tough games, so it may not be out of the question.
Joe, one of the questions, this is Sean again. I cover the Suburban League American Division, and one of the teams that really stands out to me is a team like Medina Highland. Currently, they're sitting at 7-1, but right now they're ranked in the 9th position in Division 2, Region 7. The question I have is they're set up to play Barberton in the final week, and if they're able to get past Talmadge, and is that Barberton game the make or break game for them to get into the playoffs? I mean, if they lose that game, will they need a lot of help to get into an A spot, or is it just kind of the end of that? The end of that game is either the end of the season or the beginning of the season there.
Right. So this region is one of the more entertaining ones, I think, coming down the stretch, because if you look down there, all the teams that are 7-1, 6-2, all the way down to like number 15 spot. It's a lot of teams there with good records. So yeah, Highland, I think it looks like they're probably going to have to knock off Barberton there. I don't know if they'd be able to kind of edge into the top 8 there if they lose that Week 10 game. But again, with all these other teams in the mix, they all, just clicking through it here quickly, they all seem to have at least one game that could go either way, potentially, based on records. I'm not going to pretend to have a crystal ball to predict all the games. But
oh, come on.
I don't want to get any coaches mad at me by picking one or the other. But
you'll let us do
the
prognosticating.
It looks like, I'm sorry.
You'll let us look into our crystal ball.
Right, exactly. I'll let you guys handle your predictions of your local teams there. You probably see them every weekend. So.
That's right.
Joe, we discussed tonight, kind of the difference between, most of the conferences that, 2 out of the 3 conferences that we cover have a decent non-conference schedule, where the Southwestern Conference, they have one non-conference game, and then they go right into conference play. In your opinion, does that help them or hurt them when it comes to getting those points? Because basically when you're playing most of the season in conference, you're beating each other up. Where you're playing non-conference games, you have the ability to play better teams that could potentially, if you beat them, provide you with a lot of points. And in this case, the Southwestern Conference, they play 9 conference games. Do you think that can actually hurt them in retrospect?
Well, that's an interesting question. It can kind of go either way. So you're right that they playing 9 conference games are beating up on each other, but at the same time, you're guaranteeing that someone's going to win, 50% of the games in week 2 and 3. Whereas if you're playing, say, 3 non-league games, maybe the conference as a whole wins more than 50% of those, maybe they don't. So it's kind of hard to say whether it helps them or hurts them without knowing what they might have done instead. But if you look at, especially at Region 6, you got Avon Lake, and Amherst, they're in the top 8, and North Olmsted Falls, they're right, also 9 and 10. So you've got, 5 teams there in the top 10. So that's actually, I think, pretty good for that, for having them play 9 conference games. And I think that happened a year or 2 ago also, where they had 4 or 5 of the top 8 from the Southwestern Conference. So it works both ways. So because you're guaranteeing yourself points by having all those games. But you're right. If you could have played non-league games against good teams, then that may have been better. But what it seems like more often than not, when you have too many non-league games, you end up getting stuck with a 0-10 or 1-9 team, and then it ends up hurting you anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking with Joe Eitel of JoeEitelcom. This is Ed again, and to back your point up, I work with the Suburban League National Division, and that exact scenario with the non-conference, the 3 non-conference games that most of those teams play, that's playing out exactly as it is. 2 teams in Wadsworth in Division II Region 7 and Nordonia in Division II Region 5. They've been able to take care of business in the non-conference schedule, and they've also been successful within their conference. But you have like a log jam with Twinsburg, Hudson, and Stowe Munroe Falls that are winning in the conference, but their non-conference season did not go so well for them, and that's where you're able to see, a team like Twinsburg who's 4-4. Unfortunately, those 4 wins aren't against the teams that they played in the non-conference that can get them more points because, and this is something that maybe that we've had to explain to people that listen to us and people that I talk to as a coach for Brunswick High School. It doesn't matter if you lose to a good team or you lose to a bad team. You get no points regardless of who you lose to. But the wins are the ones that the wins are what matter, and your site further illustrates that. Yeah,
that's right.
So my next question is just from an outsider, from your view, I'll go back to my senior season was in 2001 when your website first started getting rolling here, and this is when you see a game like Brunswick-Stronsville, where back then we were both 9. We ended up both being 9-1 once Stronsville beat us. Whilst Jesuit beat Stronsville, they ended up with 3 wins. But those 3 wins were really good wins, and they ended up getting into the playoffs with a 3-6 record. I know you're the numbers guy, but what is it when you see something like that? Like, what do you think about that when you see something like that, and when you see a 10-0 team that may not make the playoffs because they didn't play enough good games?
Well, right. So, first off, the 10-0 scenario hasn't happened for quite a while especially since they've expanded to the 7 divisions. All the 10-0 teams have been safe, although some of them, had to go on the road first round, so they weren't always that safe, I guess. But to your question about having a team that is 3-6 and but the 3 wins are against teams that won a lot of games. It's kind of interesting because the record doesn't look very good, but they did win some big games that were worth a lot of points in the system. Whereas a team with 6 or 7 wins probably ended up having 1 or 2 teams that were 0-10 and 1-9, and those are honestly those are worth almost nothing in the system, in the playoff system.
Right.
Yeah, I mean you might as well go out and play somebody. Of course, you don't always know how what the record is going to end up when you're scheduling couple years in advance. But
yeah,
that's really the trouble with it. But yeah, I mean, my thoughts on a team that goes 3-6 with 3 big wins, and they happen to have enough to get in the top 8 was the 6 losses, they could have replaced those with cupcakes and had a better record if, it would have looked better, but, it wouldn't have really changed anything. They would have gotten a few more points and maybe even a higher seed. So, I don't know. Sometimes, you'd like to see teams that have a good season record-wise getting in, but at the same time, sometimes there are teams that play a lot of tough teams and they'll win a few and lose a few close ones, and it's kind of hard to judge that. But I guess that's what the system is doing objectively, assigning those points based on wins by you and your defeated opponents, and sometimes it just works out that way.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often, but that's what happens, and the numbers favor him. So what are you going to do? But guys, any last questions for Joe? Joe, we really appreciate you taking time and coming on tonight. And, it was great talking to you. We use your site a lot, and we tell everyone, use JoeEitelcom because, you do an absolute great job, and there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and we definitely know about that. So we appreciate you coming on. And Ed has one more thing here.
So how much longer you plan on doing this? And once you decide that you're good, does it leave with you, or do you have something in place to continue this?
Well, I haven't really thought about that too much, so I guess that means I'll probably be doing it for a little while longer.
Excellent.
Yeah, I've actually been trying to get some of the older scores as well. One of my goals is to kind of piece together some of the older seasons and get those online as well.
Oh, cool.
So I'm kind of doing that during the off season, and so yeah, I don't think I'll stop this anytime soon until that's complete. Or I'm trying to go back at least to the 70s for the first phase and then see how it goes.
Wow.
But just kind of recreate all the regions since the playoffs started in I guess it was 1972, and I thought, well, 1970 is when they went to the 3-class system, so I might as well round it off to a nice even 1970. So there's still some work to do there, but yeah, I don't anticipate hanging it up anytime soon. But when I do, yeah, I guess I would hate to see it kind of leave with me, so I'd probably figure out a way to kind of pass that on, or maybe make the database and all the past scores kind of available for everyone, and so someone could pick it up and go. But I think that's quite a ways off.
Yeah, we have a guy in Sports on Tap that loves crunching numbers here.
Jesus.
No, Joe, we really appreciate coming on. That's great information, and we just really appreciate you coming on and talking with us a little high school football and a little bit about, the playoffs looking forward and the numbers and everything on your site. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Thanks, guys, for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. That's Joe Eitel from JoeEitelcom. Want to thank him for coming on.
Yeah, it was really, really good stuff. We, like we mentioned when we were talking to him multiple times, that we use his stuff all the time. There's many people, many coaches that use his stuff all the time, and to actually get to actually hear the voice behind the numbers, it was good, and you can hear how far he's come, the hard work that he's put in. He still puts hard work in, but now it's nice for him. He just puts the scores in, and the numbers run, and he's done a good job, and he's very accurate.
Yeah, I mean, but back when we were all in school, you had to wait till Tuesday morning when the Plain Dealer got released, or your local paper, to see where you stood in the playoff picture. You may be 6-1.
Yeah, you had to wait for the school, the OHSAA.
You may think, we're sitting pretty good, and then you find out, we're 6th in the region, or back in the playoffs didn't expand to 14 or to 18 per region until 1999. So even when we were growing up, trying to figure out, hey, is Brunswick going to make the playoffs this year, or is Vandalia going to make the playoffs this year? We had to find out. We had to wait every Tuesday, and without really having a full understanding of who needed to beat who and and everything that we just talked about.
I'm trying to rack my brain. Did the OSHAA release weekly rankings, or didn't they start doing that around week 4? Like I'm trying to go back.
You're right. Week 4 they did.
Yeah, so like you didn't even know where you stood until almost halfway through the season.
I remember looking at the Sun newspapers. And the Medina Gazette. They had the points in there, the computer rankings.
Yep. And even Joe says on his website that when OHSAA rankings come out week 4, it kind of clarifies things. A lot of that, and he says it's for informational purposes. So whatever he's telling us, the points is just his math, and it's been spot on going forward. So I mean, it's hats off to him. The sheer data that he has to go through, especially in the beginning, and having to crunch all that. I mean, once you get it all into a program to run the math, I think it's easy. But just collecting it had it been so labor intensive, like you said, it would take a whole weekend. Now it takes him till 12:30, and then he finishes up on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, and he's done. And he still has a weekend. So I imagine whatever his weekends open up a little bit more than they did 20 years ago.
It's definitely a labor of love, or to this point, he's been doing it for over 20 years. He mentioned it started off as like a project for him out of college, and this thing has really turned into a major resource for coaches, for high schools, for talk shows, for newspapers, podcasts. It's turned into. I'm not sure if he knew that it was going to turn into what it was when he first started doing this.
And with the amount of print media that is no longer out there, this is serving even more of an informational base for even shows like us that and shows that are upper, more mainstream, Varsity Chalk Talk, just to name one of many. So it's very much an informative base that we all follow, and it's awesome.
Yeah, talking to him a little bit off the air too, he said there could be some interesting scenarios moving forward. So maybe we'll try and get him to come on if, say, it comes down to a Strongsville or Amherst or Olmsted Falls. You never know with those teams. So if there's
Highland,
Highland and some suburban league teams that are right on that bubble, maybe if we have some scenarios, we'll try to get him, to come back on. Maybe not for a half hour, maybe for just 15 minutes and just go break those down real quick. But he has a lot of great info and he loves doing it. So I
imagine his dance card gets a little bit more full as these next 2 weeks come on.
Yeah, he says it usually does, but a lot of times if you give him a little bit of time, moving forward, he can maybe schedule it in. But I know he gets pretty busy at this time of the season, so I'm glad we got a chance to talk to him. And the guy's almost a legend, I think, on Sports on Tap with the way we talk and use his site.
Well, if you're into high school football, and this is and even if you do this for fun, and if you get paid for it, and you have a resource is well reputable as Joe Eitel, anytime you get a chance to get the man behind the information on, you got to take it. So we're very, very happy to have Mr. Eitel on the air with us, and talk to someone who we've known about for quite a while, and when I was wrapping up school in 2001, even though we lost to Strongsville. That day, we had an idea who we were playing. We didn't have to wait until Tuesday or even Sunday to figure that out. It was, unfortunately, we saw it pop up. We weren't hosting the game. We had to go to McKinley and play in the Hall of Fame game, but that was all because we knew it because of his website. It's great to meet him and talk to him.
Yeah, and it's cool that he's going back to 1970.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I can't wait to see that, actually.
Me neither. Like, to recreate old playoff races.
That would be awesome.
In between, and to see how all the points shook out back in the 70s and the 80s, and when they went from classes to divisions, and then when it went from 4 teams per region that made the playoffs to 8 teams that made the playoffs per region, and just see how close teams were. I mean, a one-loss team didn't make the playoffs in the early 90s. Because there's only 4 teams in the region that made the playoffs. So
it's going to be fun to see that. I can't wait till that comes out. And I'm glad he's sticking around for a while. And like you said, if not, he can have a partner with Eddie over here.
Pass down the calculator.
You can help him out.
I'll take it. I will gladly I'll gladly take that. I don't know if my wife will feel about that, but I'll be all right.
It's math.
Well, guys, it's math, and it's in week 8 is in the books.
It's definitely in the books.
But great job tonight. A lot of great information, and teams pushing these last 2 weeks to make the playoffs. It's going to be
division
grind.
and championships, league championships up in the air for almost all of our teams, really.
That's right.
All of our leagues. So going to be interesting next couple weeks. So if you're out, we'll tweet out there. We'll be active as best we can these next 2 weeks and go from there. But good luck to all the players and all the cheerleaders and the bands and coaches and fellas. I'm just wasting time because I'm making Josh very angry. I'm letting him stew in his own anger because he hates when I drone on.
This is the equivalent of Sean talking about Notre Dame and or Detroit. Thank you very much, everybody. Good luck to your teams. We will see you on the other side.
For Dick, Sean, Duffy, Josh, I'm Rob Troutman. See ya.